Weeks ago, we began our We Choose series with We Choose Community because we know that community is foundational for us. We talked about the concept of community deriving from the biblical Greek word koinonia, the concept of community in which embraces the embodiment of purpose, the action of sharing, and the giving and the receiving of love. We choose community. We choose to be attached to Christ. And then we looked at gratitude and why it matters that the Christian community affirms gratitude. Because one of the marks of being a follower of Jesus Christ is being grateful. And we learned that in the Hebrew, gratitude literally means recognizing the good. It means recognizing the good that God has already done in our lives, recognizing the good that God will do in our lives. Because gratitude is at the very heart of biblical faith, because it frames how we see and respond to the world. When we say we choose gratitude, it means we choose yes. And then it was we choose commitment. And we focus on the story of Jesus calling his disciples. It's a story about the disciples making a commitment. And then we had the opportunity to make a commitment to ministry and mission for this coming year. We choose caring followed, and we were vividly reminded of the ways that Jesus cared for other people, the way Jesus was concerned about those who followed and needed him. Because at the very heart of Jesus' ministry was the reality that people mattered to him. And last week, the youth led our worship, and the theme was serving. Paul, Stephen, Kaylin, and Julia, and Chris encourage us to take seriously our call to choose to serve. As they talked, I was reminded of something I heard in the Irish language. There's not a word for yes, and there's no word for no either. You can only answer in the affirmative. You can say I will or I won't. You can say I am or I am not. But affirmative answers are always indicated by action. The youth, challenge us to let our yes be yes. And let our yes be seen in doing. So they asked us to forget about all of our talk and show them what to do. Because they wanted us to see more than the passing needs of the world. They wanted us to choose to serve. So now this morning we conclude our series on welcome. We choose welcome. It's an important declaration. God is a welcoming God. God is on the side of the stranger and the alien and the refugee and the widow and the children and the vulnerable and the poor and the immigrant, and we can be assured of that. And in our passage from Isaiah, their community is struggling. And the author urges that faith community to envision a future that is not only ethically demanding, but requires actions of kindness and hospitality. Is it not to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to cover them and not to hide yourself from your kin. The neighbor is to be included, regardless. They are to receive food and be offered shelter and clothed. We are to share what we have because they too belong. Isaiah's words in this reading is a challenge to the temptation of affluence that excludes and privatizes. So, let's start with what feels like the more challenging dimension of our declaration. We choose welcome. It's the welcoming of refugees and immigrants. And on one level, it's kind of easy to say we choose welcome, but on another level, it is extremely difficult embodying a welcome to the refugee and immigrant. Perhaps it's explainable, or at least to some degree. Some of it is explainable because of where we live. Some of it's explainable because of our demographics. Some of it is explainable because we don't have a a great migration of refugees flying into SRQ or landing on makeshift boats on Siesta Key. So some of it is simply explainable because we are kind of insulated from the issue. Some of it also is explainable because of our views or our politics. And there are indeed some reasonable factors that puts us at distance between the ability and the desire to choose to welcome the immigrant and the refugees. But we've done it before. And those same reasons were not obstacles. We have welcomed a refugee family from across another ocean. So all of our reasonable explanations cannot become our excuses. A refugee is defined as an individual who is outside their home country, afraid of persecution, of death, if they are sent back because of their religion or race or nationality or political opinion or membership in a social group. And a refugee is one whose government is unwilling or unable to protect them. So I discovered a report in the Pew Research Center that in 2016, I'm pretty sure that they have not published a 2017 report. But in 2016, the highest number of refugees from any nation came from the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Congo accounted for 16,300 refugees into the United States, followed by Syria, 12,500, Burma, 12,300, Iraq, 9,800, and Somalia, 9,000. And it was just fascinating to me to read that over the past decade, when we were all a lot younger, the largest numbers of refugees have come from Burma and Iraq. Now, the Pew Center also reported that nearly 39,000 Muslim refugees entered the U.S. in 2016, and that is according to the data from this. I need a life, truthfully, because I read this stuff. According to the data from the State Department's Refugee Processing Center, that's the highest on record. 46% were Muslims, slightly higher share than Christians, who accounted for 44%. Now, I know it's difficult for us to wrap our arms around the issue. We live in beautiful Sarasota County, the 21st best place to live and the number one best place to retire, according to U.S. News. So we as a people just tend to be a little isolated, insulated, and a little cautious is a nice way of saying it. But we know it's a problem. We know it's an issue. And as people who follow Christ, it is important for us to be in conversation about how do we deepen our commitment to choosing to welcome. Now, our denomination has a We Choose Welcome awareness campaign, and it's to promote refugee support and help congregations build up relationships with refugees in their community. And basically, it declares that in the midst of fear and terrorism and radicalism, we will choose to welcome those who flee from terror and hate. In the midst of hate speeches and hate crimes, we choose to welcome those who are rejected because of their skin color or sexual orientation or their foreign dress. And in the midst of the anxiety of our own economic prosperity, we choose to welcome those who come from a distant land to labor in our fields and in our warehouses and in our hotels. So in the midst of all the political debate which seems to divide between those who are born here and those who are not, we choose to welcome. A welcome for all children of God. So for those who are interested in the issue of refugee and immigrant, we have some resources available, and I encourage you to learn more, and as our youth said to us last week, to do more. So let us know if you're interested in learning more about the refugee and immigrant issues that surround us. But the We Choose to Welcome also has this relational dimension. It's just not an immigrant and refugee issue. It's an outsider issue. Because the outsider, the stranger who enters, is a real person, not an image on the TV screen or not an issue that is up for debate. The stranger may be sitting right next to you today, sitting in the same pew. There may be big differences between us. There may be issues that are very serious theologically or socially or culturally that put us at odds with each other. There may be folks sitting here or in your neighborhood or in your grocery line that may be immersed in unhealthy behaviors. They may be wallowing in a sense of entitlement or superiority or judgment. So we say, we choose mean that we choose each other. And we choose to be unapologetically more inclusive. Because inclusion is an essential part of who we are, because it means that we value each other and value the contributions that each of us can make, whether it's in this room or in our neighborhoods or in our community or in our country. And perhaps it is really bold of me to say, but only an inclusive community can succeed in resolving our challenges, even the reality that divides us. I heard a story about a church youth group who took a mission trip to Jamaica, or maybe it was Bahamas. I can't remember. I wasn't paying much attention. And on their trip, they visited a elementary school and spent some time observing the teacher and the learning environment. It was a difficult, chaotic experience. There was noise, and the kids were unruly, and the youth group members just marveled to see the teacher carry herself with great calmness and patience, treating the children with love and respect, and despite the poverty and the chaos, she loved them. And they decided among themselves that the only way she could do this was that she must really love being a teacher. But they were greatly surprised to hear her say, I don't come here every day mainly because I love teaching. I come here every day because I love Jesus, and I see Jesus in each one of these children. So we choose welcome because we know that Christ is a door that swings open wide to include those who may enter. And Christ is the host at the great banquet who has the most inclusive guest list. So in our heart, at our core, we are not servants of the powers and principalities of this world. We are followers of Christ. And Christ-like living is extending a blessing rather than words of cursing. It is loving one another instead of hurting and hating and dividing. It's really, really true. We are all precious in God's sight. And that's why we choose welcome. Amen. Amen.